Welcome back to the 28 AM podcast. This is me, Ayush Majithia, your host. I'm really excited today for this episode because I have someone who has been a senior at my school, and she is really very inspiring. She was the head girl of our school. Currently, she's studying industrial design at Rhode Island School of Design, which is the world's best design college, I would say. And we had a conversation before this, and I learned so much from her that I'm very excited to share her knowledge with you all. So, Avantika, yeah, her name is Avantika Velho. I forgot to introduce that, but Avantika, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you so much for having me, Irish. It's great to talk to people. And I'm so glad that you reached out to me. And it was a really great conversation that we had the other day. So I hope we can have something similar today.
Awesome. But Avantika, for like some of us that don't know you really well, most people, which is, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm from Goa. It's obvious, but yeah, I'm from Goa. I've been born and brought up there. I went to Nisha's play school, then Sharda Mandir, which is where I guess I met you. I've always been interested in art, and my parents helped me pursue that through like I used to paint with my dad, travel to museums, and that's how I got interested in art. And then I was, or still am, a science nerd and a bio nerd, and so I went after Sharda Mandir. I went to Mustafa and Aryan's, which was like the Aryan study circle to study physics, chemistry, math, biology, and my life trajectory was going to be that I become a surgeon, but then I got sent to America for this pre-college program at RISD, which is where I was just like, let me just try what this design is. Like, it seems like a sciencey art situation. And I went, and then I loved it, found out I was good at it. That was a shock. And then I was just like, okay, like this is another possibility. And so now I'm here doing design. And that's just a little bit about me. I still am all of those like science nerd situations. And I hope, and a lot of my work is about combining biology and with the space stuff more, I guess, physics and design, and seeing how I can create new technologies that center around sustainability. So at RISD, I'm studying industrial design, which is product design, user experience design, systems design. And I'm studying nature, culture, and sustainability studies, which is all about sort of looking at natural systems, looking at cultural systems, looking at resource management, things like that.
That's awesome. Also, yeah, I wanted to share like two stories, but so actually I was in Shiksha's and Nisha's too, but I think you were way too older. You were like way too senior, so we never met. And the story about meeting at Sharda's, I actually wanted to share that. So this actually happened. Avantika was actually the Red House captain back then. I think I was in the 5th grade and she was in the 9th grade. And I was in Red House. So she had this like dance competition thing, houses against each other. And then Avantika just came in, and all the Red House students were together, those who were interested and all. And she's like, you will dance, and all. And then she was like pairing me up. And that time, when we're small, it's like boys and girls dancing together is very weird for guys. And then she just paired me up with some girl I didn't know, and we were dancing and all that stuff. So it was really awkward. But yeah, that's actually the first time I met her. And then she was like, you were in Shiksha's, right? Someone told her I was in Shiksha's. So she asked me that. I'm like, yeah, I was in Shiksha's. And like, oh, I was also in Shiksha's. Teacher Nisha would be really nice. Teacher Nisha was really nice. Now you can dance with her and all. So yeah, that was like the first time we met, I would say.
I'm glad you remember that, because I remember being very frantic as the Red House captain. Very, I don't know. I've heard from a lot of people that I was very bossy then. I've since then hopefully changed with my leadership style, but yeah.
No, I think you were like a great leader. That was like amazing having you as a leader. Even though I didn't get to vote, I'm glad the other people voted for you as the leader. So yeah.
Thank you. But I think I knew your sister when we were, because I think she was above me in Shiksha's. I think I was just too small to know like you.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I was like the younger one. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, but I wanted to dive into the RISD part. Okay, getting into the world's best design school. How did that happen? What was the experience like? What steps did you take? Like, what happened that you got into RISD out of like so many people across the globe applying for RISD?
Yeah, it it was a if you know what the setup in Goa was or was when I was in high school, it was like you go Sharda Mandir, okay, and then you go maybe if you choose science, which is what I chose, you go to Aryans or PACE, and then you kind of answer the big exam, and then you're in the school. And for me, learning about an alternative path was required a lot of research. So my mom and I um, spent a lot of time on the internet, like Googling, like what are the best schools for this and this, and then Googling. Sorry, 1 second.
No worries.
Oh, yeah, Googling the application process for each one. I found out that I had to answer the SATs, which is a standardized test, or the ACTs. I found out that my high school transcripts were very important, so I had to submit my grades from school. And I found out that I had to write essays, so institution-specific essays, and also like common application essays, which was just like different prompts every time, but like name one part of your life where you kind of overcame a difficulty, and like very like generic prompts. So once I knew what I had to do, I kind of broke that down. And applying to art, and I also applied to majors like so I applied to biology majors too. So I was like, so that was like the stuff that I needed to do for just like any school in America. But then the other portion of it was going to design school, you need a portfolio. And I didn't have a portfolio. So that one summer that I went to RISD for a pre-college program, which is just when I was in 11th standard, from June and July, the months I spent 6 weeks here. And for that, I had to just apply separately. I came to know about that opportunity when I actually visited America for the first time. And I took a campus tour of RISD. And they said, oh, like, you know, we have this pre-college program for high school students. And I was like, oh my God, like, let me go. And it was a little bit low risk at that point, because if I just went for a summer, I didn't have to commit my life to it. And it was just like a test run. So from there, I made a lot of relationships with my professors at RISD that kind of encouraged me to apply. And they were very helpful in providing me with recommendation letters based off of my performance in pre-college. And I submitted those letters with my applications to all of the schools that I applied to, not just RISD. So recommendation letter, I also asked for recommendation letters from some of my Aryans teachers. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I studied for the SAT, answered it, wrote my my essays, sent in my portfolio, and hoped for the best. It was really hard balancing Aryans and this other alternative way, because Aryans is already so intense in the way they teach you things, because they want you to do the best in that, and like having two split minds was not recommended. But I'm glad I did it, because right now I'm thanking my stars that I had that really robust education at Aryans that translates well to like a college level understanding of science principles. So that was the process. And then after that, I got an email on my phone and I screamed.
I want to interrupt you over here.
Yeah.
What do you think made your profile stand out so much? Why do you think they chose you and not someone else? I want to ask that.
Oh my God. So I don't know, because when I reached RISD, I was like, I don't deserve to be here. There's so many talented people. I had like a lot of imposter syndrome, because it's like the people here are so talented. I looked at other people's portfolios. I was like, oh my God. I think it is a mix of things. I think I had a strong portfolio based off of the work that I did in pre-college. That's why the professors that taught at RISD over there were just like, I actually did ask them. I was like, hey, in this class, like, how do you think I've done? And there's like, you produce some of the best work I've seen at this level, especially since you haven't done it before. And so they gave me a lot of like quality assessment of my work that I could trust because they were, I guess, my professors. Beyond that, I think something that set me apart was I think the way I articulated why I wanted to go to RISD, and it was a very strongly influenced by my interest in science and my interest to combine design and science. And I think, and this is pure speculation because I have no idea who is judging my application, but I think when you articulate why you want to do things in your vision, something that's non-generic, something that's unique to you, something that shows your passion for the discipline, but also shows the way that you intend to discover it and change it, that makes you a compelling person to an admissions board, because they're like, oh, she's seeing things differently. That's interesting, you know. And if you can pique their interest in that way, and maybe make them see things a little differently or intrigue them, I think that's a good thing, because I think RISD wants to build like a community that has diverse viewpoints. So you don't want everyone to say the same thing and everyone to have the same viewpoint. You want to have people from all over so we can kind of enrich each other. And I think that's where articulating yourself really well and your passion through your lens is very important. And then you just hope that they agree with you or they like what you say. I don't know, but yeah.
No, but I think that's the really interesting part, which you spoke about, combining science and design together. I think even I reached out to you for the same reason. When I got in touch with you, I told you that. And then the conversation which we had, it is really so interesting because you add, like you said, that there are a lot of times when you're creating these designs, you add the sciencey aspect to it, like, okay, this material will work, this material might not work, and all that stuff. So when you reach out to the people who are actually going to construct it, you seem like smarter than the other people who are designing it, which is like really cool. But in general, also, it's super amazing to know. But I wanted to ask you this, how has your experience been in that way? You know, when you've combined science and design together, have you had any projects that you've worked on like that? Have you had any experience in that field? What was people's reactions like? What was it like?
Yeah, the experience has been hard. It's because I think not a lot of people are doing it right now. And I've only begun to see people getting interested in combining sort of like natural sciences like biology, and through that, like through the lens of sustainability into design, or mimicking natural systems, or, you know, with physics getting like very involved with engineering. I think engineering and industrial design are very closely linked, and it has been for a while. So we have car designers, I have people in my class who are designing shoes, cars, very technical instruments, and they're like, and you know, computation too has made its way like way faster than biology has, because biology just seems like a discipline that you would not integrate with consumer goods or systems or anything design. And so for me, my main science of integration, I guess, was like looking at natural systems, ecologies, and seeing how they might impact like design solutions. And by that, it's very broad, but I'm thinking about like sustainable services, or like better farming practices, or, you know, food waste systems is a project that I worked on, optimizing food waste systems, directing them to create biomaterial waste that can be used inside institutions. All of this stuff was very hard to convince people to do, because not a lot of people in the design world have like the ability to think that way. Usually designers consult experts, but when you're a student, you're kind of like the person that does everything on your project. So you have to do the research yourself. I've had the great privilege of working with a lot of people that have diverse interests. So I've worked with people that are also majoring in mechanical engineering, that are majoring in the cognitive sciences, biology, worked with clubs that have engineers on them, and also, you know, other people from the liberal arts. So I've tried to insert myself into the interdisciplinary communities like across campus, so I can be part of projects that, you know, cross disciplines. And it doesn't really have to be the bioscience integration that I'm looking for, but that any type of integration helps, because it helps you speak to other people that are outside of your discipline, which might be hard. Project-wise, I've done. I took part in the Biodesign Challenge, which is an international challenge that where students propose sort of designs inspired by nature or designs that use nature strategies to make something more sustainable. That happened through my school. RISD also has a nature lab that allows for a lot of like experimentation. I've also taken part in a lot of NASA contests where I've worked with a lot of engineers that has spoken more to the engineering side of my work. And in that, we've designed sort of like dust mitigation technologies, human rovers that are human powered. So yeah, lunar rovers that are human powered for NASA's Human Exploration Rover Challenge, and also like sample bag dispensers for astronauts that is more like industrial design because it's like a designed object. So yeah, across the board. I've also been a part of research collaboratives that have like RISD has this sponsored collaboration with Hyundai and Kia Motors, where they've sponsored research that that students kind of look at natural systems and specifically insects or like other energy systems, and then they translate that into some sort of technology. So I'm working on creating like hydrophobic surfaces based off of butterfly wing morphologies. Yes. So had a couple of different experiences.
Okay, you know which experience I'm going to dive into next. I've spoken to this
yes, I do.
about you before. I was like, okay, I've been very excited, and I spoke to Avantika like for like a very long time about this last time because I think that interests me the most, which is about your NASA projects. As you know, I'm very passionate about space. So if you could tell the audience about your NASA projects and the experience with that.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that RISD and has I think a very good relationship to NASA because of one of our faculty members used to work there and now is a NASA liaison, Michael Lai. Almost the entire NASA soft goods team is our RISD ID grads in some capacity, or at least so it seems. So we've had like our school institution historically has had like a lot of association with NASA, primarily through the Human Rover Exploration Challenge. Human Exploration Rover Challenge, sorry, it's HERC. And so that's how I got involved because there's this club, RISD Rover, which was a club that we could join, and we kind of worked on this vehicle that could be like powered by humans. We had the task was to have a lightweight rover that fit in like a box, and then that we could perform tasks with. So the ultimate challenge was when we shipped the rover to Alabama, and where NASA's.
But what do you mean by powered by humans? What does it mean? I mean,
so
like, do you like?
So it's like kind of like a cycle. Like it's not like a cycle, but it has pedals. So it's like actually human powered. It's not automated.
So then how does
so it's
how
for
would
like
the
what
rover
humans
work
would use.
once it's sent to space? How would it work then?
So this rover this rover is more to look at sort of like novel ways of building human powered vehicles on the moon. So this is like the assumption of after humans like colonize the moon. So it's kind of like an ongoing challenge that NASA is doing for human exploration of the moon, which is currently not feasible, but it would be in the future. So that's like kind of the challenge. So we have like an obstacle course where you power the vehicle, and then you kind of also have to design these tools that help you take core samples, that help you take other things. So there's like a lot of places in that task in the challenge, and then we have to design the wheels, the chassis, the suspension, the steering, the everything. And so that was like my first introduction to and like also fabricate the carbon fiber body and everything like that. So that was my first introduction to like thinking about steering, what is that? Thinking about composites and wheel design, what is that? So that was my first experience. The year that I was on it, COVID hit, so we couldn't send our rover to NASA, to participate in the contest for obvious reasons. And then this club sort of pivoted to like other contests that are not like super hands-on, where you need to like physically be there to aid your design. So we partnered up with Brown Space Engineering for the Big Idea Challenge, which was part of NASA's Artemis program. So NASA's Artemis program is like NASA's like next mission to the moon, and all of these challenges that fall under the Artemis program are potentially going to be used or are R&D for the Artemis program. So the big idea challenge, we kind of focused on regolith mitigation. So like lunar dust always sticks to astronaut spacesuits, and that causes a lot of hazards. So like it increases the wear and tear of the seals in the suit. It comes inside the cabin and goes inside the astronaut's lungs, and that's not good. So we need to find a way to get the lunar dust off of astronaut spacesuits. And lunar dust is like glass shards, so they're like very pokey, and they're also ionized, so they have a charge, so they stick to fabric really well. So we came up with along with Brown Space Engineering, came up with this technology that's called TestRad, which is like tufted electrostatic solution to regolith adhesion dilemma. And it was inspired by a chinchilla. And a chinchilla is an animal that has very dense fur. And we created sort of this dense metallic fur tape thing that repelled regolith, or was so dense that you like put it at the seals and nothing could get through it. So it protected all of the seals. And that was a year-long project. We actually proposed that to NASA initially through a proposal. They accepted the proposal, funded it. We got about $80,000 in funding. And then, we got $80,000 in funding, and then worked to realize like a prototype to like a technical readiness level 4, which is like, some benchmarks that NASA has. It has to work like this. We have to do this type of testing. All of this information can be found online if you look it up. But it's like, I don't know what you want to know more about it, because I don't want to describe the project in too much detail.
No, but I think it's really interesting. I'll tell you why I found the project interesting. Like you mentioned earlier, also it was inspired by an animal, and the quote, I think you told me about it, that there are like 50 strings per centimeter or something like that.
Yeah, they're like 50 to 80 hairs per follicle for the
follicle. Okay, that's a lot. Correct.
For the chinchilla. But then we tried to replicate that as best we could for TestRad. So we couldn't replicate the 80, but yeah, it was like pretty, like the tufts were as dense as we could get them to be. And all of that was like manually done. And, actually wasn't that hard to do, but yeah, and it was like a low cost solution, which they really love. We actually won the most creative concept award for that thing. We didn't win the whole challenge, but we won that. But yeah, it was a good experience. It was a good experience to work with. It was a 30-person, I think almost a 30-person team, ranging from like physicists, geologists, industrial design students, mechanical engineers, computer scientists, everyone. We had a lot of people on that team.
I think it was just like amazing to hear about it. But I wanted to also ask you this thing, which is you worked in a similar project. Remember when you told me that you were designing the NASA spacesuit, the clothes that people could wear in space, because it's different. I want to ask you that. Like you also told me about how the color is important, how the material of it is important, and one of your designs was also selected. So if you could tell us all about that, like including the details about color, the design, the material, and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I was part of this class at RISD, and because we have that relationship with NASA, it was about designing space apparel. It was a fashion design class. It was an apparel design class that was about designing clothes for the astronauts inside the space station or inside, so in microgravity. So not their exosuits, like not the suits that they wear outside, but the clothing that they wear inside the International Space Station or inside the lunar module. And we spoke to Nicole Stott, who was an astronaut, who's the first woman to do watercolors on the moon or or watercolors in space. She was the first woman to do watercolors in space. And then she kind of gave us like the lowdown on how living in microgravity is different. And so how your clothes kind of float over your body. So you don't need loose clothing, because any type of clothing is loose clothing. How, like, there's no real like gravity, so nothing sticks to your body. Like your feet are floating, so you have to anchor your feet, like take your feet and hook them onto things to like stay put in places. You need like a tethering system. Your hair kind of floats all around. And so she gave us like a first-hand view of what it's like to be in space, which is like kind of a fangirl moment for me, because I was like, oh my god, like I'm speaking to an astronaut. And anyway, to an artist astronaut, and I was floored. But anyway, and then we also spoke to the NASA soft goods lab, and they kind of mentioned the technical constraints for apparel going in the Artemis capsule. Right now, it's like at a 30% oxygen level, which makes a lot of fibers that are existing flammable under that oxygen atmosphere. So, and dyes are prone to, any sort of dyes are prone to off-gassing, which causes like toxic fumes and things like that in like those environments. So we had a lot of constraints as far as like the material goes, and and because NASA, I don't know if I should say this, but like, I don't think they have a material that they're going to make the clothing out of. So a lot of our research was about materials, and like thinking like what could be the materials that they make this clothing out of. So we did like a lot of material research. So I looked into fibers such as wool, PBI, which is like the firefighter thing, Kevlar, it's also fire resistant, and kind of trying to use their natural colors. So undyed PBI is like brownish beige, undyed Kevlar is like a bright yellow, undyed wool is like various ranges of like grays to off-whites, and trying to find like apparel designs that worked with those colors, but also were functional in the way that provided tethering systems for the astronauts so that they could stay put to their workstation, or provided like Velcro pads in an aesthetic manner so that they could fix their iPads at their knees, and sort of accommodated all of these other constraints that they had. So it was a really interesting project. And when for my final crit, we had people from the soft goods lab show up, and they really liked the way I integrated sort of these formal elements of lines and functional elements. And they were very interested in this one pair of pants that I designed. Whether or not they will actually make it, I have no clue. I cannot confirm that, but they said that they were interested and they have the designs. So that's what I know from that.
Okay, before we get to the next topic, I'm going to go a bit off. I'm just going to be grateful that I have taken science in the 11th and 12th so that I could understand a lot of all the conversation that was happening and finding it interesting. That's what I just want to add. I know it's random, but I just wanted to add it in between.
No, and that's exactly what I feel, because I took science in the 11th and 12th. And when I'm talking to all of these people, I have tried to take science classes now too, but it's not the same. You're not immersed, like all of your classes are science. All of my classes are design and some science classes, but it's been great to have that knowledge so I can build on it like individually, but then also know what I'm talking about and know like what other people are talking about when we're on the same team, because I think that's like a superpower.
But have you felt like people, when you're on a group, you're working on something, and then there are people who don't know sciencey stuff? Do they look stupid? Do they look funny? What happens over there? Like, I'm just curious, what runs in their minds?
They don't look stupid. I think everyone asks questions, which is a good thing. It's a matter of convenience that you get it, but if you don't get it, you just ask questions and people explain it to you. And that's what I think is the great, at least part of the great ecosystem that I'm in, is like everyone's willing to explain and everyone's willing to teach. So in terms of like, so I'm right now in a studio right now where we're working with MBA students and Masters of Engineering students and designers together. There's so much like conversation that's happening that I'm like, mostly from the business side, because I don't really know a lot of stuff about business, but everyone kind of explains. And when I talk about things like user journey map or user needs or like ideation or brainstorming or like these things, they're like, what are you saying? And so I have to kind of like de-jargonize my discipline, and they have to do the same for me. And so no one looks stupid. You just ask more questions. And I think if you're in a good team, that would be supported and not. And I've I'm happy to say that I've been in good teams. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, they don't look stupid, but it's for me, it was a matter of convenience, where I could just get it when they said it, and probably had lesser questions or different questions that were not related to clarifying what they just said. And I was asking them questions that improve or like dug deeper versus trying to have them reiterate all the time. And also it's always as a person who can understand both disciplines, it's not a duty, but it's always great that you can kind of take a complex scientific topic slash thing and make it easy to understand for designers. And so being a liaison, not saying I did that for everyone, obviously there's like, but like if I'm on a team and they're like, okay, what did they say about that? And then I'm just like, well, this means this, if you think about it this way. And then that's also great, you know?
Well, you spoke about asking great questions. I think that's like a very important thing. For a very long time, for me, I used to get very afraid of asking questions, even in class. And I think probably when you come in the seventh and eighth, you realize that it's okay if you want to. Till seventh and eighth, I used to get scared of asking questions. Once I grew older, I kind of realized that it's okay to ask questions. It's kind of normal. It should be normalized. I don't know. It's not yet normalized so much to the extent which you would say. I've not seen it so much actually. But the more it's normalized, I think it gets better. Because I'll tell you this, in 8th standard, I used to like read a lot of these quotes. I became this quotes guy, okay? So I used to read a lot of these quotes and all that stuff. And all these quotes were like so inspiring and all. And there were these quotes that you should always keep on asking and learning and all that stuff. And I got inspired by those quotes and started asking a lot of questions. And I can tell you this, by asking questions, I've learned so much which I wouldn't have learned. And I even ask random questions which are not related. Like, if you look at it, this podcast is actually me asking questions. Even the conversation that we had before, I asked you so many stupid questions. It was just, I feel you get to learn a lot, and it gives me a sense of fulfillment from within, I would say, just by asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do agree with you. It wasn't a practice that I'm a very talkative person. I've always been so, like, even in school, I probably have asked a lot of questions at Chardamanda, and so I never had that problem. But I did notice that it wasn't. I would never ask because I felt like embarrassed sometimes if it was like a very like elementary question. And so when I came here to college, I was like, everyone, and they want you to ask questions. I was like, damn, I have the permission. Let's do it. And then I just like keep asking questions to the point where sometimes it's just me and the professor, and then I feel like I need to step back. But it's great. I've also learned the most when I've asked questions and asked for clarification. It also shows people that you're listening to them in a way, because you're kind of asking them to clarify themselves or to explain something differently, and they feel like they're being heard. Because like I think there's something, it's good that no one has any questions, but it's always like at the end of a speaker session there's a Q&A and like there's no questions. That's kind of like, oh my god, I've given you all of this information, are you sure you don't have any question? And I've been on the receiving end of that. I've been like giving talks, and sometimes people don't have questions, and I'm like, damn, like did they understand, or did I like say something that's like, like completely not making sense? So it's like a source of anxiety for me. But I think that so questions like relieve all of them, because when someone asks me a question, I'm just like, oh yes, let me explain, and then it's like, and it's great. But yeah.
That actually happened to me. So I gave a speech once online, like that. I'm very proud of that. It's only one speech, but I was like invited to a school to give a speech about the whole podcasting thing and all that stuff. And it was a 1 hour long session. And I was very nervous that I didn't know what to talk for 1 hour and all that stuff. So I had actually planned out originally that I would talk for 50 minutes and have 10 minutes for Q&A. But instead what happened was I could only talk for half an hour barely. And then I thought that I couldn't talk more than half an hour. I don't know why. And then there were 30 minutes for Q&A, and I got scared that no one would have anything to ask, and there would be awkward silence. It looked very weird and all that stuff. And then there was so many questions that were asked, and I found it really so interesting and fun to just answer those questions. And I realized that, okay, these people are actually listening to me. Like when people ask questions, I kind of feel like, okay, this person's interested. He's understood the conversation, and he's asking about something that he didn't understand. So that makes me feel nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like also like if you think back to like anytime I like attend a talk that from a person that I'm inspired by, I always make sure that I have a question if I can ask it. Whether or not I get the chance to ask it, I always make sure, because I'm just like, yes, I want them to know that I actually listen to them and I have a question. So it's a good strategy. Questions are great.
Okay, but I wanted to come to the next section, which is about leadership, which is you've been an amazing leader at school. I will have to tell you that. Probably one of the best head girls we had at Sharda Mandir. So, what were some things that you learned about leadership along the way?
Along the way, like ending at Sharda
Yeah,
Mandir or till now?
Yeah, till now, because I think you've also led projects and all that stuff at RISD or different classes and all. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. What I learned from leadership as far as head girl goes, I think at that point it was about approachability. I think it was definitely about like being someone that people felt comfortable talking to. And I don't know if I achieved a lot of that, but I always wanted to be someone that people could come out and be like, hey, like, I know you. I'm like, hey. And then, like they would like tell me something. And I remember having instances where people would just come up to me and tell me things, and I would kind of, help them out with that. And for me, that was like the biggest thing as a head girl. And also being someone that people could like see as not aspirational, but someone who just like, okay, like she's look at her, like she's there, and like I can ask her questions, but approachable, but also like aspirational in a way. And I hope that it was something that I didn't really have, like as head girl, like you have like what, like emceeing to do, and you have like to do all of like your little duties, which is fine. But I think it was most like, I'm glad people believed in me enough to vote for me. And then I just didn't want to disappoint them. So I just didn't want to be a bad person. I always wanted to be a good person for them. I always wanted to be someone that they could talk to because they believed in me. And so that sort of humility was what I learned with Sharda Mandir. And then coming to RISD and my leadership, I'm right now the ID Industrial Design Department representative. So things have translated, I think. And that was also like, now I'm striving for like also the same things, like a little bit more administrative reform, because I'm at that like at that position where I can ask for things, but also looking at like, how can I make my community better? How can I ask people what they want? How can I bring people together? How can I showcase the people in our department? How can I listen to the pain points and then translate that into action? So that's been more as I've grown up, as I've learned how to navigate administrative systems, as I've been given more responsibility and not just nominal weightage. Having those conversations has gotten a lot easier. In terms of team management, I've been I've been in a lot of project management positions and a lot of like leadership positions as far as like project teams go. And from that, I've learned how to get people excited about a project, because I remember not liking to work in teams. And that's because I've always like been like, oh, like on a team, like we're never on the same page. We're just wasting time, all of these things. And when I was in a position to be a person that could possibly change that, I was like, okay, how can we have none of the problems that I have as a team? So I was like, how do I get people or my teammates invested in the project so that they want to work on it too? How do I manage conflict? How do I so a lot of like the team dynamics, conflict management, responsibility allocation, also being a person that pulls everything together. Like your team needs to be able to trust you, especially if it's a non-hierarchical team. Everyone has their own thing to bring, but if it's like even like a semi-hierarchy, it's up to you to hold the team. So if your team is not doing too hot, it's up to you to kind of like gather that and make sure that everyone's running at the same pace. So I think that, yeah, and also learning how to get the best out of people, I think is the biggest skill that I've learned. Like, how do you recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the people in your team, and then how do you like help them do the best that they can in this team, not through just advice giving, but through like actively like working with them in conversation. But yeah.
I'm going to ask you like a tactical question, which is something which I faced. So in 8th stand, actually, I was a leader of some project which we were working in class. And the thing is, there was one kid who was not working at all, which was really challenging for me because then we ended up doing his work for him. So I wanted to ask you this: how would you deal with such people who don't do their work? Because it's not always feasible to do their work for them and all that stuff. So
yeah, I've been in the same situation, which is why I didn't like to work in teams. But since then, because of what I've described, have found some strategies. I think it first, if you can, choose your teammates, choose them wisely. You have a like that's the first thing. Like if you know that you work well together, try and work together. If you know that your kind of work ethics line up, then that's the best. Like you should discuss that up front when you're making the team. That segues into my next point is like be very transparent from the beginning about what your expectations in this team are. Okay. If you're a person that likes to work a lot, that likes this certain level of finish to your project, that this is this, you need to be transparent about that. And then you need to get everyone on board, or you need to like switch out from the beginning. Like, I don't think we'll work well together, or these are my expectations. What are your expectations? Okay, let's find some middle ground. That initial negotiation of expectations from each other needs to happen. Like I've had conversations with people where I was just like, so I don't like it when people say they're going to do something and don't do it, but like in a better way. But that was the gist of it. So let's promise to, when we're assigned a task or when we say we're going to do something, let's promise we deliver, because we don't have the time to run around behind each other making sure that things are done. So if we're aiming for a non-hierarchical team, let's just delegate tasks and it's going to be up to you, and making that really clear from the get-go, and saying like, do we need a meeting time every week? Do we need, and then establishing that before you even get into the project, because then you establish expectations, and then you establish we're working well or working not well. And then when you establish expectations from the beginning, down the line, if this person is not working, you can just go to them and be like, remember how we discussed in the beginning that we would do this? You're not doing it. And then they can't claim that they didn't know, or they can't claim that we never clarified the expectations, or they can claim that they had a different idea of what this project would be like for them. So that's a strategy to like get agreement on them. If I've been in places where we had to sign a team charter, which is a bit extreme, but like if you can just get like a verbal like okay with like more than, if you have 3 people in a team, it's best, because then everyone, it's not you against your word against theirs. It's like 3 people can have like heard and agreed to the same thing, and then you can then hold them accountable to that. I found that a next strategy that I found is just like making them want to do this project. It's also very big. I seem like someone I can throw myself into any project and give my all, but I think like a lot of people are required to be invested in the project in order enough to care about them, because a lot of people do really well in things that they care about, and things that they don't care about, they won't do it. So initially, like coming up with the idea together, making sure that everyone is excited about the idea is like key to having like follow through.
I think I will try that out. Okay, so I'll tell you this. I was actually working at a startup earlier. I've mentioned that to you earlier. And I was actually working with other people on that. And what was happening was, at certain points, I couldn't get the other people to get the work done, and I didn't know what to do. So I would go to the guy who was above me. I mean, there was no hierarchy as such, but the founder, I used to approach him saying that, how do we figure this out? He used to always help me out. But looking back, I feel I should have taken the responsibility and the approach in getting the task done, because it was assigned to me. And I think I will try this out in the future, whatever you've mentioned, which is like really great. But I wanted to,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can continue. If you were saying something.
No, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this thing. Like earlier, you mentioned that before you felt imposter syndrome. So I want to ask this: do you still feel that, or how do you deal with it? What happens in that?
Oh, good question. I think I have grown since then. I think it's it was a culture shock and also imposter syndrome at the same time because I'm in a place that has very, very talented people. Um, and I hadn't come from a background where I had confidence in my design ability. So I only had like those professors tell me that I was good enough to make it. And that was it. Like I really didn't have like any confidence in my ability to do design. I think in science or I think in other fields, there's more of a metric of 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 goodness. You can get good marks, you can get bad marks, you can know a concept, you can not know a concept. But in design, it's more nebulous. It's like because it's so abstract, there's no gauge. You can't like gauge how good or bad you are from the beginning. So that was something that was like very, I was like, damn, like, I don't know, like, there's no metric for me to know to fall back on to know that I'm good. Like, I answer exam, I know this concept, I know, like, I know this concept, okay? Or I studied it, I know this concept, I know this concept. But what design is like, what do you know? What do you learn? Like, it's very different. So it's all based off of like your skill and the way you kind of basically trust yourself and trust your process. And it's very hard to do when you're just starting out, which is why I was so intimidated because there was no gauge. Yes, grades are a gauge, but grades in like are just not the best. Like as I know, like it's dependent on a lot of things, but it's not as one-to-one when it's in design school. Like grades are not one-to-one in design school. It's grades are more one-to-one when you have exams and like this, because if you go to a professor, hey, can you justify my grade, that there'll be a lot of things of like it's subjective. It's very subjective a lot of the times, unless you're really not putting effort, and then it's not subjective. You just didn't do the work. But so the imposter syndrome came freshman year, which is like the first year that I was there, because I was like, everyone is so talented. We were all working in the same space. But honestly, I took it as a challenge to be like, no, I'm here for a reason. And I think because everyone was going through the same thing, everyone felt that way when they came here. Because I've spoken to people and they were like, yeah, man, like I don't know why I'm here. Like, and then we all realized like we're here, right? We're here for a reason, like whether or not we deserve or it's not for us to decide, we are here. And so made it through that. And now I kind of know myself better as a designer because I have been exposed to years of work. All of these strategies have really honed in on my process, and I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I know like how I work, and I know that I produce good work um, based off of like critique from other people, based off of feedback from other people, based off of like sometimes awards, based off of other recognition situations, but mostly based off of like the fact that I feel more comfortable in my skin as a designer now because I am more experienced. And I think that has taken away a lot of the imposter syndrome and has made me more confident in like, I know what my strengths are. I am not trying to be a scientist. I'm not trying to be just an artist. I'm trying to be who I am. And then it's up to me to propose my value to other people. Does that make sense? Like I've become more of a self-advocate than like yeah. So I think that's the shift that has happened. Like with experience, I've championed myself. I've become a self-advocate and I've acknowledged the fact that I'm not like a lot of other people. And not like a lot of designers are very different. Like almost every designer is different in a lot of ways. So it's like there's no competition, which is a great thing. Like I'm in this space with people who are at the tops of their fields, and I don't feel competitive with them. I feel happy for them. I feel different from them, but I feel like I'm also with them in the same thing. So I think becoming your own self-advocate has really helped me get past imposter syndrome, even when I'm put into new situations. Like right now, I'm doing a class at MIT, and I had like, just because it was MIT and just because it was like graduate students, I was like, shit, I'm just 22. These people are 35 with like all of this experience. Like that was like when imposter syndrome was maybe coming in, but then I was like, no, I'm the designer. I know how to design. I can do this. And then I found my voice in those conversations, which I think as a young professional is also really hard, but the same thing. I'm more experienced than I was in freshman year, and then it'll keep going, you know?
Okay, I never had a imposter syndrome. I'll share my story kind of. I've never had an imposter syndrome in communication or drama and going on the stage and all that stuff, because I think Shiksha Niketan trains us like really well in doing all of that. But I always had an imposter syndrome whenever you go for these birthday parties, you meet different people and all that stuff. There's dance happening, there's people talking and all that stuff. I always felt left out in that for some reason. And I'll tell you why actually, because for me, I mostly listen to Hindi songs and Punjabi songs, a lot of them. And usually when you go to these parties, it's all about English songs that get played, you know? And I used to feel always left out. People are dancing, people know the words and all that stuff. And one day, I don't know why, I just did this very funnily. I started doing these Hindi dance moves and English songs, and somehow all of it just started sinking in. You know, your body starts sinking into the music once you let yourself free. And slowly I started dancing and all that stuff. And I realized I started enjoying, and I was missing out so much of it earlier in my life because I wasn't really doing it. And I think I got over the fear of, you know, interacting with people, communicating with people at parties, dancing around and all. And yeah, now if you look at the party, if you ask my friends, I am the one who's dancing the most. And it's actually funny because I've noticed that a lot of guys now, earlier I don't know why guys have this thing that they don't dance at all. And then there's me who's dancing completely, jumping around and all that stuff.
Oh my God. A very interesting story. No, I think that I'm glad that you found your two right feet. I don't know. But no, it's great. I think that I don't know. Me, I yeah, Jay Shannon does teach you how to do all of that stuff, but I can see how like the social anxiety would be a lot in those situations. But for me, it was like a lot to do with like coming here to America was like, like I don't know how to do these things the way you do, because it's like a lot of like cultural differences, even though like, you know, we watch American TV shows and things like that, but it's just different, man. I just felt like I didn't know half of their snacks. People used to say like Cheez-Its, and I'm like, what is what is Cheez-Its? And they're like, no, it's a snack. I'm like, oh. I thought it was like some sort of like slang word. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, getting over that has also been pretty hard. But I've had people that have been like, oh, Cheez-It, you don't know? Okay, you're not, I won't make fun of you. I'll just give you a Cheez-It so you can know what a Cheez-It is. So yeah. But yeah, imposter syndrome is more like, I hope you never feel that way, but it's more like I felt like I don't deserve to be there. And like everyone is like, oh, we don't deserve to be here because like we're not good enough to be here. Which is like, no, well, we are. And then enough people were feeling it that we were just like, okay, like there must be a reason. It's okay.
But I wanted to ask you this.
Yeah.
Have you read the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg?
No, I haven't.
Okay, basically what the book talks about is like women actually by naturally feel imposter syndrome a lot more than men. So if you actually give a task to a man, he will be overly confident about it that he'll be able to do it. Why? That means he will hype it up more than his capability, while a woman will, you know, say less than her capability. She will say, oh, I might not be able to do it, while the guy will be like, oh, I will definitely be able to do it and all that stuff. So do you think that was one of the reasons at RISD? And also, why do you think does that happen?
Okay. I will say I do see how that analogy is, I mean, especially in industrial design, there's a lot of sexism, and it's been there since like forever. Like my professor was just like, she shared with me a story like when she pulled me aside, and when she was like, when I was in school, my professor just like straight up asked me like, why are you here, you know? So it has since then changed because now I have professors who don't ask me why I'm here. But it was really bad for women in industrial design for a very long time, and still it's not the best. But I think that it's, for me, as a person, I can only speak to myself. I've always been pretty self-confident in my ability to do something. Um, I've been humble when I don't know how to do something and I'm learning how to do something. So that's when I don't have the confidence to do something, when I'm learning how to do it. But and I'm always learning how to do things, but that's like something new. I'm learning a new skill. Like I'm learning how to do this for the first time, right? That's when I don't have like my confidence in myself. But then when I've been doing this for a long time and I know I can do it well, I don't feel that and I don't sell myself short because, and that's something I've noticed about myself. And that's, I think, has gained me a lot of respect from my peers, is that I'm a person who delivers and I'm a person who doesn't overpromise and underdeliver and doesn't, but also, yeah, I do agree. Like, I don't oversell myself, you know? And I think that comes from, I don't know if it's linked to, I think it might be linked to ego in a way. Like I have an ego, but I don't have like a toxic ego. You know what I mean? I am a strong personality, but I'm not, I never want to be a person that undersells myself, because then I know I'm hurting myself, right? I'm hurting my reputation if I don't deliver on what I've said I would. So I'm always very careful when I'm saying like what is possible for me. And I always want to exceed expectations, if that makes sense. So I won't set people up to expect things that are greater than what I think, but I will work to exceed things. So, and I think that's also been a good strategy as far as like self mental health goes. Like, I don't want to feel that I've disappointed people. I just want to feel that I've done well and people have either, if I'm working for someone, that they have been happy with my performance, or if I'm just working for myself, that I've like, not disappointed anything that I've said. So I don't know. I haven't read the book that you're talking about, but I do feel like definitely I don't have a tendency to oversell myself. And I think also a lot of the women around me, very competent women, like hugely competent women, sell themselves just right. Don't oversell themselves. Don't have anything to gain or lose. A lot of the men around me also are pretty great. But there are a few that I'm just like, well, your work isn't really that good. So I don't know what you're talking about, bro. But yeah, and at RISD we have a really open
I'm just
culture
gonna come in between. I mean, we've not worked on a project or anything together, but what kind of vibes do I give?
The vibes that you give off. Yeah. You give off confident vibes, which I like, but you also give off like you're very considerate of other people, and you're not like, even today with like the whole Zoom call thing, I was like, there's so many ways you could have responded to that. The fact that you acknowledge that, oh, okay, that was like a mistake, which is like, not a lot of people do that. I've had this happen with a lot of other people, and they were like, oh, can we just like da-da-da. And so I think that you give off confident vibes, which I really like. And then I also think that you give off respectful vibes, because I think it's all about respect in like the professional environment. Like, if you respect someone and if you're respectful of their time and who they are, and then you get respect back. And that's something that's helped me a lot. And I feel that from you. And I also feel I'll push you on the confidence front, because it's refreshing to see people that are confident about themselves and that have a lot of self-confidence. So it's very impressive, is what I'm saying.
Okay, can I share this, what I feel about you, the vibes which I get off from you? Okay, I get these really, like, one of them is obviously confidence vibes, and second is great leadership vibes, because I actually remember you being a great leader at school. Third, I feel you can be stern at times. I'm just judging. I'm not sure about this because we've never really met, but you can be stern at times to get the task done. But at the end of the task, once it's done, you're going to be nice and you're going to like cheer up everyone and you're going to be like, oh, well done and all that stuff. These are the kind of vibes which I get. If I'm not wrong.
That is so true. No, you're not wrong, man. Like yesterday, I was on, we did a make-a-thon yesterday, me, my roommate, and another friend of mine. And it was like, we had 4 hours to make this thing. Okay. And I was just like, like we need to get making. So I was a little bit of a bitch, but then I wasn't like, I will frame it as a respectful bitch. So it was like, we need to move on because we're not going to have a project. And then they were like, okay. And we made the thing. We won the competition. So it was great. And then they were just like, if you didn't do that, like we would not have made it. And I was just like, thank you, like for understanding that at some moments, like we just gotta, but and yeah, but then a lot of people that work with me want to work with me again. So that's where I count where like I'm not a toxic teammate or I'm not a person that people find to be overbearing. So it's been about learning what the right balance is for certain people, and it's still like I'm still learning how to do that well. But yes, thank you. I do get stern at times, and I do, but I also am very like bubbly and happy when I need to be. So
Yeah, which is really great because it makes the other person respect you because you know how to get the tasks done and you can be nice and you can even boost up the confidence. So that is like a wholesome thing, which is like really great. That is why I think a lot of people would respect you for your work for that.
thank you. I think you are right. It's also been like what part of my learning has been to accept these things when people say these things because people have said these things about me. But I'm just like, no, like, oh no, like you're but like part of it has, and then like someone, I think one of my professors was just like, no, accept it. Like, and she's someone I look up to and was like also a woman who was just like, because sometimes like when I'm talking, I'm like, does that make sense? And she was like, no, what you said makes sense. And you have to say, does that make sense to you? Because you're clarifying whether that makes sense to the person that you're talking to, not whether that makes sense in general, because what you're talking is sensible stuff. So like little things like that. And I've had like people, like even one of my professors was like, every time I said sorry, he was like, why are you sorry? I don't, oh, okay, I won't say sorry. And like every time, like I used to say sorry, like after presenting my work or like whatever, like some fault that I found in my work, he's like, what? Why are you doing that? I'm gonna cut your grade for this because you said sorry out of like humility or embarrassment. I was like, so like I'm learning all of these like practices has been like, you know, professors have helped me out with it, but it's been very healthy. And so like also being able to accept like compliments has been a huge thing, right? Because like not a lot of people, you know, you feel like you're,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
I wanted
I
to
don't know if
ask
you
you
have the
this.
problem, but yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you, this is like a very personal question. I am in the exact same situation where you're in. When people give compliments, I just don't know what to say. I'm like, thank you. And I don't know what to say ahead. And what I'll do is I'll just reflect it back to them and say something nice
Mm.
about them because I don't know how to accept compliments exactly. So, how would you do that? And what would be your suggestion?
Yeah, I used to do the reflecting compliments thing, but what I learned with that was I started feeling insecure about the compliments that I got back. Like sometimes I should say something nice and someone needs to say something nice to me. And then I was just like, okay, does that have value or is it just like something that they're saying to be nice to me? And when I realized that I could be on the receiving end of a not a disingenuous, but like of a polite compliment, I I kind of always try to say things that I mean. You know, sometimes it happens in a split second where I'm passing by a person and be like, "Oh, nice hat," and I'll be like, "Nice shoes," but I'll make sure that I'm like at least thinking about what part of their like, you know what I mean? Like what part of the what do I like about them and compliment that so it's not disingenuous in a way because I wouldn't like receiving a polite compliment. You know, I wouldn't like knowing that they're just saying that. And that has helped because then I'm just like, okay, if I'm saying genuine compliments all the time, then I don't feel bad about receiving compliments. And then saying thank you and just leaving it at that, like thank you without embarrassment has been also a thing. Just say thank you with a smile, and don't don't give a compliment unless you want to give a compliment because they gave a compliment and they shouldn't give you to expect one in return. And I think that's just a healthier way of looking at compliments. Like whether it's about like, oh, you're looking great today, you just say thank you. Or, oh, your work is really great, thank you. And if you have something to say back to them, like, oh, and yours is too, da da da, you know? But I think it just means more, because then I know that whenever I give a compliment, and the people who know me and my behavior know that when I'm giving them a compliment, I actually mean that. And I'm not saying it, so they can differentiate, which is a good thing, right? When I say that I like your confidence, it's not because I'm reciprocating what you're saying to me. It's because I actually mean it, and that means something. And when I know you're saying that to me, I'm saying thank you, and I'm accepting that as a compliment. So it's not like you are complimenting me to fish a compliment from you, because I'm not indulging that. And so I've found that just like saying thank you when you're and just being happy about it, and then only complimenting when you have something to say. And it could be a small thing like, I like your red mic, whatever, like whatever,
Exactly.
whatever, as long as it's truthful. Yeah.
Awesome. I think I will definitely give that out a try. Okay, so do you have anything else to share to the audience before we end this, or any last advice?
I don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of stuff to say. I just like, if any of them want to reach out, I guess that could be a thing. But I don't know who's going to be listening to this. But yeah, if you want to reach out again and just chat, that would be awesome. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining in. It was really great having you. There was like sometimes when you meet new people, I mean, this is the second time I'm speaking to you, but yeah, still sometimes when you meet new people, it gets like awkward at certain points where you don't know what to talk about. And I can say that it's been really great talking to you, where there were none of these awkward moments. I felt very comfortable sharing my stories with you and all. So thank you so much for your time. It was great having you on this podcast.
I'm really glad. Thanks to you for having me. And I wish you all the best of luck with everything that you're doing. And keep in touch.